Hi guys, this is Carol on a mini lecture on Evidence of Evolution, Chapter 13. So clues to evolution, that's what we're looking for, lie in the earth, they lie in body structures, they lie in molecules. So when we think of lying in the earth, we're thinking of fossils. Body structures, we're thinking of anatomy, comparative anatomy, and molecules, we can look at DNA. And we can look at all these structures to get an idea of, or get some of these clues to the evolutionary process. So we believe that Earth's history is about 4.6 billion years. That's how old the Earth would be. But life took a while. It arose about 3.8 billion years ago. So down below we have the geological time scale here. And we try and make sense of what happened at different times along this geological time scale. And the way that those periods are defined is usually by some major geological or biological event, like a mass extinction, for example. And that breaking up of this historical time is in eons, eras, periods, epochs. And you have a really nice diagram, which is this diagram in your text. There's a lot of information on this, and I'm going to let you look at it in your book, but basically we're separating it into what happened in the Paleozoic here, the explosion of sponges, and we move on to first vascular plants and the bony fish and more reptiles and what goes occurring historically along this geological time scale. This is a lot to remember. It's also confusing because it's so many years, 450 million years is confusing to the brain. So I'm going to have you just concentrate on two of them, two periods, the Carboniferous and the Paleozoic, which is 350 million years ago, where the reptiles arise. There's a good picture there of what we think they look like. An era where the ferns were abundant, and we still have ferns today. So ferns are very ancient organisms. And the first winged insects. So before that, some arthropods were moving around, but they didn't have this capacity to fly. The other one I want you to know is Jurassic. Jurassic in the Mesozoic era. And that's about 206 million years ago, where we had the first birds. Also the first mammals. There's a picture there of what we think the first mammal looked like. And it was only about 4 inches long, which is amazing to think. So these little furry milk drinkers were little tiny organisms. And, first birds looked like a flying reptile. And many giant reptiles, again, ferns and cycads, these big sort of tree ferns. And so that is the time of the Jurassic and of Jurassic Park. It's hard to keep those dates straight when it's so many years. So I like this time clock because it gives you a little bit of an idea of time and when we showed up. So imagine if you had a clock and you're thinking of a 24-hour period. If Earth formed at midnight, then in order for prokaryotes to appear, it would be about 5 in the morning. That's how long it would take. And then how long would it have taken after that for eukaryotes to appear? Well, those would have appeared about 4 p.m., so a long time goes by before we get eukaryotes. From there, what about multicellular, more than one cell, a bigger organism? That would be late, 8 p.m. These are all aquatic still. So at what point would they have moved on to land? Well, maybe about 10 p.m. And when did we show up? Well, maybe about 30 seconds before the end of that 24-hour period. So that's how recent we are. Paleontology studies fossil remains, and we look at these fossils trying to figure out common ancestors. If these organisms look very similar, did one evolve from the other? And those are the clues that we look for. However, it's hard to find a complete record. Can't find all the fossil ancestors to all fish, for example. This is a beautiful fossil of a fish. But what fish came before it and what simpler fish came before that? Can you find them all? No, it's impossible to do that. But there is one amazing transition that we have some data for that I want to show you. And that transition is about how animals moved, how one animal moved from water to land. So this drawing is an idea of a fish-like organism that maybe lived in the muddy, flat part of the water, maybe could stick its head out, and maybe its fins could support a little bit of weight, but not a whole lot. And what made it adapt to land and move out of water? In 2006, a fossil was found, and we believe it's about 375 million years ago. And I have a fantastic video for you to see, that you should see, that's posted for you. So this fossil is found in the Museum of Natural History of Chicago. And the remarkable thing about it is that it looked kind of like a fish and looked kind of like a terrestrial organism or an alligator. So it has a flexible neck, so that's not fish-like. It can breathe on land, so that's not fish-like. But however, it has scales and it has gills and also kind of a beginning of a lung and strong ribs showing that it can take care of that lung and support those lungs that are there and protect them. So it's also sort of like an amphibian. So it was coined the fishapod because it's a tetrapod in that it would have, 4 legs to walk on land, yet it was part fish. Very, very interesting find, where you find an organism that's like not one or the other, but an in-between, a transitional organism. It was found in Arctic Canada, and it was called Tiktaalik. And this was found in the Devonian right before the Carboniferous. I always say we should do a field trip to Chicago Museum of Natural History and go see the Tiktaalik. So this is some diagrams of what we thought this organism looked like. I probably had wrist bones that supported it if it was in very shallow water. Here are some thoughts on how this could have been. Some sort of limbs that were fringed with something that looked more like a fin and not a toe. That's probably what this organism potentially looked like. So I want you to see that video on Tiktaalik. It's called Great Transitions, The Origin of Tetrapods. And later I'll have some discussions on that. I'll end there.